Episode 7 of Space Prison by Tom Godwin. Read by Mark Nelson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Space Prison, Episode 7. The mockers were fresh meat, but they accepted the humans with such friendliness and trust that Barber lost all his desire to have one for supper or for any other time. They had a limited supply of dried meat, and there would be plenty of orange corn. They would not go hungry. They discovered that the mockers had living quarters in both the cool caves and the ones warmed by the hot springs. There was evidence that they hibernated during the winters in the warm caves. There were no minerals in the Mockers' Valley, and they set out to continue their circuit of the chasm. They did not get far until the heat had become so great that the chasm's tributaries began going dry. They turned back then to wade in the little valley until the fall rains came. When the long summer was ended by the first rain, they resumed their journey. They took a supply of the orange corn and 2 of the mockers, the yellow one and its mate. The other mockers watched them leave, standing silent and solemn in front of their caves, as though they feared they might never see their 2 fellows or the humans again. The 2 mockers were pleasant company, riding on their shoulders and chattering any nonsense that came to mind, and sometimes saying things that were not at all nonsense, making Humboldt wonder if mockers could partly read human minds and dimly understand the meaning of some of the things they said. They found a place where saltpeter was very thinly and erratically distributed. They scraped off all the films of it that were visible and procured a small amount. They completed their circuit and reached the foot of the long, steep slope of the crags without finding anything more. It was an awesome climb that lay before them, up a grade so steep and barred with so many low ledges that when their legs refused to carry them farther, they crawled. The heat was still very serious, and there would be no water until they came to the spring beyond the mountain summit. A burning wind, borne on the blazing floor of the chasm, followed them up the mountain all day. Their leather canteens were almost dry when night came, and they were no more than a third of the way up to the top. The mockers had become silent as the elevation increased, and when they stopped for the night, Humboldt saw that they would never live to cross the mountain. They were breathing fast, their hearts racing, as they tried to extract enough oxygen from the thin air. They drank a few drops of water, but they would not touch the corn he offered them. The white mocker died at mid-morning the next day, as they stopped for a rest. The yellow one crawled feebly to her side and died a few minutes later. "So, that's that," Humboldt said, looking down at them. "The only things on Ragnarok that ever trusted us and wanted to be our friends, and we killed them." They drank the last of their water and went on. They made dry camp that night, and dreams of cold streams of water tormented their exhausted sleep. The next day was a hellish eternity in which they walked and fell and crawled and walked and fell again. Barber weakened steadily, his breathing growing to a rattling panting. He spoke once that afternoon, to try to smile with dry, swollen lips, and say between his panting gasps, "It would be hell to have to die so thirsty like this." After that, he fell with increasing frequency, each time slower and weaker in getting up again. Half a mile short of the summit, he fell for the last time. He tried to get up, failed, and tried to crawl. He failed at that, too, and collapsed face down in the rocky soil. Humboldt went to him and said between his own labored intakes of breath, "Wait, Dan, I'll go on, bring you back water." Barber raised himself with a great effort and looked up. "No use," he said. "My heart, too much." He fell forward again, and that time he was very still, his desperate panting no more. It seemed to Humboldt that it was half a lifetime later that he finally reached the spring and the cold, clear water. He drank the most ecstatic pleasure he had ever experienced in his life. Then the pleasure drained away, as he seemed to see Dan Barber trying to smile, and seemed to hear him say, "It would be hell to have to die so thirsty like this." He rested for 2 days before he was in condition to continue on his way. He reached the plateau and saw that the woods goats had been migrating south for some time. On the second morning he climbed up a gentle roll in the plain and met 3 unicorns face to face. They charged at once, squealing with anticipation. Had he been equipped with an ordinary bow, he would have been killed within seconds. But the automatic crossbow poured a rain of arrows into the faces of the unicorns that caused them to swing aside in pain and enraged astonishment. The moment they had swung enough to expose the area just behind their heads, the arrows became fatal. One unicorn escaped, 3 arrows bristling in its face. It watched him from a distance for a little while, squealing and shaking its head in baffled fury. Then it turned and disappeared over a swell in the plain, running like a deer. He resumed his southward march, hurrying faster than before. The unicorn had headed north, and that could be for but one purpose: to bring enough reinforcements to finish the job. He reached the caves at night. No one was up but George Ord, working late in his combination workshop laboratory. George looked up at the sound of his entrance and saw that he was alone. "So, Dan didn't make it?" he asked. "The chasm got him," he answered. And then, wearily, "The chasm. We found the damn thing." "The red stratum?" "It was only iron stains." "I made a little pilot smelter while you were gone," George said. "I was hoping the red stratum would be ore. The other prospecting parties, none of them found anything." "We'll try again next spring," he said. "We'll find it somewhere, no matter how long it takes." "Our time may not be so long. The observations show the sun to be farther south than ever." "Then we'll make double use of the time we do have. We'll cut the hunting parties to the limit, and send out more prospecting parties. We're going to have a ship to meet the Gurns again." "Sometimes," George said, his black eyes studying him thoughtfully, "I think that's all you live for, Bill. The day when you can kill Gurns." George said it as a statement of fact, without censure, but Humboldt could not keep an edge of harshness out of his voice as he answered. "For as long as I'm leader, that's all we're going to live for." He followed the game south that fall, taking with him Bob Craig and young Anders. Hundreds of miles south of the caves, they came to the lowlands, a land of much water and vegetation and vast herds of unicorns and woods goats. It was an exceedingly dangerous country due to the concentration of unicorns and prowlers, and only the automatic crossbows combined with never-ceasing vigilance enabled them to survive. There they saw the crawlers, hideous things that crawled on multiple legs like 3-ton centipedes, their mouths set with 6 mandibles and dripping a stinking saliva. The bite of a crawler was poisonous, instantly paralyzing even to a unicorn, though not instantly killing them. The crawlers ate their victims at once, however, ripping the helpless and still living flesh from its bones. Although the unicorns feared the crawlers, the prowlers hated them with a fanatical intensity, and made the use of their superior quickness to kill every crawler they found, ripping at the crawler until the crawler, in an insanity of rage, bit itself and died of its own poison. They had taken one of the powerful longbows with them, in addition to their crossbows, and they killed a crawler with it one day. As they did so, a band of 20 prowlers came suddenly upon them. 20